It occurred at the precise instant the candles went dark. The clapping subsided, the room caught its breath, and I remained standing, wine glass in hand, smile fixed in position, while my mother-in-law presented me to her supervisor as my daughter's jobless spouse, the man who couldn't maintain employment or a marriage. Mockery swept through the gathering like blades. Her supervisor shifted toward me, steady, collected, and then he grinned, a subtle, understanding grin. He gazed at her, not at me, and spoke softly, "You're terminated." Stillness, the type that vibrates with shock. Her expression lost all color. My wife became motionless, fork suspended midway to her lips. And me? I simply sipped my wine. Vengeance, I discovered, is most satisfying when you're not the one serving it yourself. Things weren't always this way. When I initially encountered Clara, her mother was courteous enough to feign affection for me. I was an emerging architect back then, driven, determined, creating something from scratch. Clara had faith in me. Or so I believed. We constructed a life together, modest apartment, mutual joy, inexpensive wine, soft-spoken ambitions. Then achievement transformed into demand. Clara's mother ensured that. She evaluated my value through advancements and income. And when my company collapsed, she proclaimed it evidence I was never worthy of her daughter. I recall how Clara ceased standing up for me. "We'll manage through this," became, "You need to sort yourself out." It wasn't merely the statements. It was how she resumed dressing elegantly for business dinners. How her phone remained screen down. How she'd recoil when I entered during calls. The indicators were subtle initially. Modified passwords, distant embraces, justifications that didn't require logic. But I didn't challenge her. I've discovered that individuals expose themselves most clearly when you cease interrogating them. The reality arrived one evening via a misrouted email, a forwarded exchange between Clara and her mother. Subject heading, "Next Steps." They weren't discreet. Her mother had been assisting Clara secure a role at her firm using her own supervisor's authority. There were attachments, agreements, schedules. My name surfaced twice. Once beneath obstacle, once beneath resolved. That term haunted me. Resolved. I didn't rest that evening. I didn't yell or destroy anything. I simply sat in darkness, staring at the illumination of that singular word. That's when I determined I wouldn't react. I'd respond. First arrived patience. I allowed them to assume they'd already triumphed. Clara drifted further emotionally. Her mother became increasingly audacious in her contempt. I performed the part of the fool, silent and compliant, while they murmured and plotted. I began freelancing minor projects under an alternate identity. Her mother's firm, Hensley Designs, was growing. Fortuitously, I was contracted as an external advisor through a collaborating agency. She remained oblivious. For half a year, I labored quietly on submissions her supervisor examined personally. I ensured my contributions were notable, not for their genius, but for their dependability, professionalism, and outcomes. Her supervisor, Richard Lang, was an astute individual, the sort who observes particulars. Eventually, he contacted me directly. We conversed. We comprehended one another. When he referenced Hensley's internal difficulties, inadequate management, workplace rumors, abused authority, I merely listened. When he requested specifics, I supplied documentation, correspondence, calendars, communications. I never mentioned her identity. He uncovered it independently. Which returns us to this evening, Clara's birthday celebration. Her mother demanded hosting it at an exclusive establishment, surrounded by her associates and social opportunists. I was merely the escort, endured for propriety. The atmosphere was saturated with fragrance and insincere praise. I'd nearly forgotten how draining their society was until her mother's voice pierced the noise, amplified enough for all to notice. "This is my son-in-law, Mark, unemployed, but at minimum he's attempting to remain pertinent." The table erupted in laughter. I remained expressionless. Richard Lang, positioned beside her, lifted an eyebrow. His gaze shifted to me, understanding materializing. He reclined, smiled slightly, and addressed her in that composed, measured manner only individuals with complete authority possess. "You're terminated." The venue fell silent. Her smile fractured. Clara sputtered on her wine, and I merely placed my glass down and acknowledged Lang with the slightest gesture, the smallest recognition between two individuals who'd both perceived the reality long before this moment. Subsequently, I departed before anyone could utter a statement. I didn't require witnessing her mother plead or observing Clara's face shift from astonishment to comprehension. They'd erected their foundation of falsehood upon my quietness, and this evening it crumbled without me lifting a finger. Outside, the evening was crisp. Streetlights blurred against the damp concrete. I stood there briefly, hearing the muted merriment still floating from within. I wasn't furious anymore, just finished. Clara telephoned later, naturally. Her voice was shaking, saturated with bewilderment and apologies she hadn't deserved. I listened, then I disconnected. Some individuals confuse silence for fragility. They assume if you don't retaliate, you've been defeated. But silence can be an instrument. It compels your adversaries to speak initially, reveal themselves, excavate their own tombs. And when they ultimately collapse, when the mockery ceases, and the audience shifts, it's silent, tranquil, precisely how I prefer it.